Did you know that your husband had transferred his share of the house to his mother? I asked the notary Camille. No. But we have a child together. How can that be? Maybe he had the right to dispose of his half as he saw fit. So now I have to sell the house? Camille looked at the notary with eyes full of tears. Well, you could buy her half, he suggested. Another way out? Do you talk to her? Yes. I haven't worked for the last 2.5 years. I've been babysitting, I don't have any money. Well, then you just have to sell the house and split the proceeds in half. The notary answered calmly. Camille took her daughter in her arms and left the office. It was a blow to her. Of course, she hadn't invested as much money in the house as her husband had. But if he had at least told her that now, this ridiculous situation wouldn't have happened. Camille realized that with the sale of the house, she would not be able to buy anything. She didn't want to go back to her parents, and it was pointless to ask them for money. They never had any. Camille was still reeling from Benjamin's funeral, but her deep pain at the loss had been replaced by resentment and a lack of understanding of why he had done what he had done. She thought all the way through, but if he thought I lived in our house undeservedly, then he could have told me so to my face. And he was always playing the
loving husband, constantly repeating that my daughter is the main person in his life. But that person turned out to be his mother. Anyway, Camille decided that she would not run through any courts. She needed money to hire a lawyer, and she had nowhere to get it. For the first few days, she felt betrayed by her husband, even hated him. But one night, she woke up abruptly. I won't blame anyone, pounded in her temples. His mother wants to see me as a victim, but I won't play that role.
I'm going to try to get Emily into daycare today. If that doesn't work out, I'll find some kind of work-from-home job. I won't be a victim of circumstance. I can do this. Camille Ortsmau was no different than any other young mom. At 20, she married Benjamin. For 2 years, they lived on their own. The girl worked at the market. They managed to scrape something together. The young couple was lucky to live in a one-room apartment, which was given to them for free for a while by the aunt of a good friend of her husband. That's why they managed to save money for 4 years. Benjamin was a car mechanic. He had a pretty good coven. When the accident was a year old, they bought a small house. Camille woke up in the morning with a clear feeling that if she wanted to change something in her life, she would definitely succeed. But it wasn't that simple. She constantly felt hurt by the way her husband had treated her. Camille had always known that Evelyn didn't like her. She had no illusions about that. After the wedding, she told her, Camille, I won't interfere in your life, but I don't want to lie. You are not the woman I would like to see as my Benjamin's wife. At first, the girl was taken aback, but then she realized that it was better than having her mother-in-law come to them all the time and make scandals. Evelyn, on the contrary, had only appeared at their house a few times during that time, so the very fact that Benjamin had signed over his share to her was very puzzling to his wife. I don't want to judge him. She tried to push Camille away from her. Negative thoughts he did as he saw fit, or was forced to. I can't blame him for that. Camille fed her daughter and began to get ready for the nearest daycare center. Emily was about to turn 2 years and 7 months old, so the state kindergarten could not take her from the age of 3. Immediately, the headmistress stated, "That's the way it is here. It is unlikely that a budget organization will take you, only a private kindergarten." "I can't afford to pay for it," Camille answered quietly. The headmistress shrugged her shoulders. It was none of her business. Lena tried 2 more kindergartens, but the situation was the same. All recommended private organizations. What should I do? Camille thought to herself. We will not survive with Emily on the survivor's money. Especially now, we'll have to rent a place to live. Maybe Evelyn would agree to sell me her share in installments. Camille walked with Emily into the park. sat down on a bench and took out her phone. She was nervous, but she had to find a way out. "Evelyn, hello," Camille said in a shaky voice. "I went to the notary the other day. He told me that Benjamin had transferred his share. Maybe it's for the Berkshire. She said angrily out loud. This foolish belief in good people does no good. People are what they are. Don't idealize them. Yesterday, a man may have seemed decent and cordial to you, and today you find out that he is cruel and inhuman. I don't want to fool myself anymore. No longer will I expect that there are good people around me who want to help me, that someone will knock on my door and offer to solve my problems. I alone am responsible for my life and the life of my child." Camille clenched her hands into fists. She had no intention of feeling sorry for herself and berating her husband and his mother. The woman came home, fed the baby, and put him to bed. Sat down in a chair and wondered what I could do. Camille grabbed a sheet of paper and began to write. I want to be honest. Soon a column of several phrases appeared on the sheet. Now I'm going to write everything I want to be. Camille reread the huge list. She stopped at several places and pondered what she had written. Something on her list. She didn't like it and crossed it off. So I have no education, but almost 4 years of experience in the market for half a house and about 30,000? Camille sighed. Well, now what? I want a proper place to live, a job with a decent salary, free time for my daughter, and good security for her. Yes, it looks like I can't have it all. Camille was very upset. It was a vicious circle from which there was no way out. That night she had a strange dream. Camille was walking through a gloomy forest. It was already dark. She was very afraid. She had a premonition that she would not get out of it alive. Suddenly the woman noticed that someone was walking towards her. Are you lost? The old woman asked her. You must have taken a wrong turn. I don't know, Camille cried. Help me get out of here. I'm very scared. I can't go with you, but I'll show you the way out. She pointed somewhere with her hand. But remember, if you don't want to get confused again, let everything happen in your life. Even if it seems silly and frivolous to you, warned the stranger. Even if it's silly and frivolous, repeated Camille's words upon waking. What does it all mean? But that I have clearly gone to the wrong place. That is no longer in doubt. But did I marry the wrong man? Or did I need to divorce him after a few years? Camilla did not understand anything yet, but the words of the old woman from the dream seemed very important to her. Maybe I shouldn't make grandiose plans, but look around me. A thought struck her. She took her daughter in her arms for a walk. Today she decided to go to the park with her. She was in an oppressive mood. The solution to her problem hadn't come yet. A distraction. Maybe Eureka will descend on me. She tried to smile. Still, it was better than sitting at home and going crazy. Emily was playing with some boy. Camille watched her intently. After half an hour, Mom and the baby left, and the girl sat on her lap. It was the end of May.
And I didn't want to go home, but it was too late. Emily had to be fed and put to bed. Daughter, let's go home, shall we? Her mother kissed her, but the girl shook her head negatively. Do you want more? What about our dinner?
But Emily did not want to hear anything, and Camille decided to stay a few minutes longer. Someone spoke from behind the bench. The woman jumped. A stranger at her side was handing her dandelions. Hello, the woman was surprised.
Oh, what a beautiful bouquet. Thank you very much. The woman looked around, but saw no one who was interested in the child. The boy looked to be about 5 years old. Where's your mom? She said, a little frightened. Or Daddy? You're with who? Daddy, care, he smiled. The child hurriedly sat down on the bench and extended one hand to Emily. Hi! The girl laughed and started clapping her hands. Camille looked around once more. No one was looking for the baby. Oh my God, is he lost? She shuddered. I'll try the park. Maybe someone's looking for him. Camille took the boy's hand and started walking along the paths. Every now and then she'd come up to someone and ask them a question. And the boys questions. But nobody knew anything. What's your name? She stroked the boy's head. Do you know your first and last name? I am a goal, he answered and laughed. Camille looked intently into his eyes. Her heart raced. Your name is Stephen. Do you know your last name? The child shook his head negatively at Camille. She was scared out of her wits. She had no idea what to do with the baby. I can't leave him here, she reasoned, and we can't wait here indefinitely. I'll take him with me and then call the police. Camille took the children and drove home. She fed them, put them to bed. After that, she immediately called the police. Camille told them what had happened, but no one was looking for the boy or interested in him. The policeman took her details and said he would call her back. Stephen spent almost 2 days at Camille's house. He appeared to be a calm child. He and Emily got along very well. It was almost 8 when the doorbell rang at Camille's house. She came out immediately. A young woman stood in front of her. Expensive clothes and jewelry. It was said that she was not poor. There was a policeman standing next to her. But where is this one about the execution? The guests cried. Where's the one about the execution? A guest cried. Can you imagine? He ran away from the nurse. My God, what an unbearable child. I wouldn't say that, Camille objected. Stephen is a very quiet boy. Come in, but come here. A woman approached the boy. Why did you run away from the light? If you behave like that again, you'll stay at home. Are you his mother? The lady of the house couldn't stand it. Camille fixed his eyes on the stranger. Yes, she said arrogantly. Unfortunately, Stephen is a troubled boy. We can't get along with him. The guests left. Stephen kept turning around. It was obvious that the child didn't want to leave. She's strange, Camille sighed. She treats the child as if she didn't care about him. Almost all night the woman could not sleep. The boy's face was always in front of her, and she felt warm toward him. However, she did not know that this story would not end there. A few days later, an expensive car pulled up to Camille's house. Camille stepped out into the yard in bewilderment. Hello, someone waved at her. I'm Stephen's mother. Could we talk to you? Camille stepped outside in surprise. The stranger stood in a too revealing short skirt, nodding all the while. I'm sorry, I forgot to thank you last time, she said artificially.
Thank you very much. My name is Christina. You're welcome. We enjoyed Stephen's company very much, Camille replied. Emily played very well with him. That makes me even more convinced that I made the right decision. Christina's eyes lit up. You see, it's such a problem for me to find a suitable Nananya for my son. So, how did you and he become friends then? I was wondering if you could help me out.
You want me to babysit your child? Camille said in astonishment, but then the words from the dream flashed through her mind. Even if it's silly and frivolous. All right, Camille answered suddenly. My God, I'm so glad. Then a man will come to you every day from me, smiled the guest. About the salary? Let me pay you at the end of each week. So, do we have a deal? Deal? Camille smiled back. I hope Stephen won't mind. Christina laughed and quickly jumped into the car. Finally, she managed to get rid of that boy. She'd had enough of all those babysitters. The last Betty was walking with her child in the park when she received a phone call from her boyfriend. She'd had a fight with him and, forgetting about the baby, had rushed off to confront him. Stephen was so busy at the playground that he didn't even notice her leaving. Betty had only been working at Christina's for a week, so he hadn't really recognized her. Camille came into the house in a strange state of mind. She liked Stephen a lot, but from the outside it all seemed a little confusing. At least one of my wishes has come true, she smiled. Now I would have a job. It would be very convenient to take care of the children, and Emily would be able to develop with Stephen. That way, she wouldn't be alone. I don't know when I'll get a place at the daycare center. After lunch, Camille went to the store with her daughter. She had to prepare something tasty for tomorrow, cooked them some insoles and stewed vegetables. Camille had no expectations of herself, but she waited for the boy with anticipation. He had immediately entered her heart, and the news that she would now be able to earn money gave her hope that she would be able to rent a place to live. That night, Camille did not notice that she had fallen asleep. She felt at ease. The next day, Camille had been expecting Stephen since 8:30. He was brought in, apparently by Christina's driver. The man only said that he would pick him up at Assen Davenwire. The landlady would also give her the money through him. All right, 7 o'clock, Camille agreed. He would be ready by then. The boy, with a joyful cry, rushed to Emily's mother. She took him into the yard. Now that they were serious. So Camille began to prepare various developmental programs for the children. Stephen was going to go to school in 2 years, so it was necessary to teach him to read and count.
Much to Camille's amazement, the child turned out to be very capable.
He picks up everything on the fly. What a clever boy you are. Camille hugged him. Stephen, you're a good boy. I want my daddy. Suddenly he said something and cried. The woman was confused. She pressed the child against her. He killed her and flapped his nose for a while. Stephen, where is your daddy? Camille asked cautiously. What is his name? She stroked the child's head. Papa William. I don't know. He cried again. The landlady calmed him down and tried not to bring up the subject again. Friday came. Camille thought that this was the end of her work week. I'll bring him back later tomorrow, the driver said when he picked up the child. Sunday too. Are you going to bring Stephen on the weekends too? The nanny asked in horror. But Christina didn't say anything to me about it. That's what she told me. You'll call her then and find out, he muttered. I don't know. Camille walked home confused. She wanted to call Stephen's mother first, but something stopped her. He's not really bothering me. So be it. She agreed. We'll have more fun together this weekend. On Sunday, the driver handed Camille the payment for the first week. The woman was pleasantly surprised, as if Christina had spared no expense, but if this keeps going on, I just don't have the words. I didn't feel bad about investing in Stephen without that kind of money. Now I can buy him interesting developmental materials. On Monday, Camille and the children went to the art store. Stephen picked out his own games, and the woman looked for something for her daughter. Camille was looking at a box with an impressive ship. Stephen, we're going to build it. I'm going to be a captain when I grow up, declared the boy. This is my collage. He clutched the box to his chest. They returned home. They had so many precious things. This day, they still had time to make a beautiful toy and some appliques. Emily looked how shiny it was, rejoiced like a mother child. What a beautiful kitty we made. That day, Stephen didn't even want to go home. He was in no mood to pack his things. I want to stay with you. He looked intently into Camille's eyes. I don't want to go home, Stephen. Mommy's waiting for you at home. Nanny hugged him. She didn't want him to leave either. No, I don't have a mom, only Dad. Shook his head in the negative. What about Christina? She turned pale. She said, you're her son, Stephen. Christina is not your mom. No, he answered firmly. I had a daddy, but I don't know where he is. I want to go to him, cried the boy again. After Stephen's departure, Camille was in a state of utter bewilderment. Of course, after the child's words, some things came to a head. Christina was behaving strangely. It was obvious that she was not at all interested in the boy. Now, the natural question is, who is she? Surely Stephen could not have been living with her illegally. Perhaps she was a relative of his. Camille had to be cunning. "Excuse me, we could talk to you?" She approached the driver, who had brought Stephen in this morning. "You see, the boy cries a lot because of his father. Do you know what happened to him? I just need to do something to calm him down. But I can't help you with that." The man said it right away. "I've only been working at Christina's for a month. They say he's dead. His sister's the owner." "Thank you," said the nurse. "You've been very helpful. Well, I'll see you all tonight then, as usual." Camille led the figure into the house. Her heart ached. A lot of things made sense to her now. Christina was most likely the child's guardian. Despite the family ties, she didn't care about him. Stephen had lost his father, but the boy had not been told about it on purpose so as not to upset him. Camille understood everything. At first, Emily cried for Benjamin, but she was too young, and Stephen was twice her age, so he understood a lot of things well. "I'll try to explain it to him gently," she thought. "I'll do my best not to traumatize the child." Nevertheless, Nanny had been thinking about Stephen all day. She not only felt sorry for him, but she saw clearly that the boy would have no future with Christina. She did not love him and would probably be more than happy to get rid of him. A time was passing, and Camille realized that soon, the 6 months after Benjamin's death would be over. And that meant that Evelyn would be arriving soon. Had the house issue been settled in her mind? Of course, Camille could resist and not agree to sell the house. But that would be a path to nowhere. Camille would not do something to spite or fight with her mother-in-law. By this time, the woman planned to rent a house or an apartment. Moreover, Christina had been paying her well for a month and a half. Camille arranged a swimming pool for the children and watched them lovingly. She wondered how Stephen could get along with the accident, and her daughter was crazy about him
Too. They're like brother and sister, the nanny thought. Maybe that happens sometimes. Total strangers become so friendly they can't live without each other. Then a cat came up to the children, and they almost bathed him.
Camille ran to help the animal. "Barsic, did you fall right under the hot hand?" She pulled the cat out of the pool. Cat children do not like to bathe. "Why?" Stephen immediately asked. "They don't know how to swim." He made a serious face. "Unfortunately, they can't."
"That's why Barsic might drown," Camille replied. "So let's not take him to the pool." The children agreed and happily ran in. The cat laid down in the sun, and in a few minutes his fur was almost dry. "There, now we're dry," huffed the woman as she lost the children. "Now for lunch and rest." 2 weeks later, much to Camille's dismay, Evelyn appeared near the yard, and she looked great, as always. In fact, looks were her greatest asset. For as long as the daughter-in-law had known her, her mother-in-law had always looked stunning. "Hello, Camille. I've come to see the house," she said imperiously, and went uninvited to the gala. When she saw the children, she saw a mute question in her eyes, but Camille said nothing to her. Evelyn was not interested in the affairs of her own. Her daughter-in-law, and even her granddaughter, did not interest her much. "In 2 days, I shall come with a buyer," declared her husband's mother. "After inspecting the house and the vegetable garden, I'm sorry, but I need money urgently, so I ask you to take care of the new house in advance." Camille didn't even come out to see her off in the hallway when Evelyn called for her elegant sandals. Someone had called her. The woman didn't expect it herself, but she nestled against the window. Her mother-in-law came outside and started talking. Why did he get involved in this case? She said unhappily. I told this lawyer that he died suddenly. Well, I'll deal with him myself. Don't tell him that Benjamin was sick for almost 6 months. You wrote the report on the examination. That's it. She disconnected the phone and quickly went outside. Camille cautiously peeked out from behind the fence. The mother-in-law was already far away. Perhaps she had gone into the direction of the bus stop, or maybe she had hailed a cab. As far as the daughter-in-law knew, she had never driven a car. What was she saying? Camille thought in horror. It appeared that Benjamin was seriously ill. She returned to her children and began to replay everything that had happened to her husband in the last year. Almost 6 months ago, one morning, Benjamin was getting ready for work. Yes, he looked pale. Camille remembered that moment exactly. Benjamin, but why don't you stay home today? She was worried. But if you're not feeling well, you won't be able to work properly anyway. Her husband insisted and left the house at the beginning of 8. That was the last time she saw him. At 8 p.m., she received a call from the doctor informing her that as Benjamin was returning home, he became ill. He was rushed to the hospital. He passed away 2 hours later. The doctor then told Camille that he had a fatal disease in a latent form. The wife for a week or 2 was so badly killed that on the nervous ground she developed anemia, and she even walked with difficulty. But then for the sake of her daughter, Camille took herself in hand and a month after the funeral began to slowly withdraw. So his mother knew he was ill, but why had neither he nor she said anything? She couldn't understand. Camille knew it was useless to go to her mother-in-law, especially since they had nothing else to do with the accident. She did not want to maintain any relationship, so Evelyn would not tell her anything. Then I'll go for broke, she told herself. As they say, the best defense is a fence. Camille was a quiet person by nature, but after what her husband and mother had done to her, she had a rebellious streak in her. The next day, she took the children and went to the hospital. She remembered who made the report on her husband's death. Okay, here's the deal. Either I open a criminal case against you for withholding information, or are you going to tell me everything now? I'm not letting you in. She tapped the doctor's desk with her hand. The man looked at her in bewilderment. He could not understand what was going on. Who are you? He asked unhappily. What do you want from me? I'm going to call the police and have you taken out of the hospital. Camille introduced herself. The doctor turned pale. It was obvious that he hesitated. The visitor kept her eyes on him. I promise that if you tell me the truth, I will forgive you, she said quietly. What was there to tell? He sat back in his chair, tiredly. Your husband had a very rare disease. When we discovered it, it was too late. He made a decision not to tell anyone about it, but since I know his mother, she found out about it. Did she ask you to cover it up? Why? Camille wouldn't give up. What did she want to get out of it? I don't know, he admitted honestly. Your husband couldn't be saved? As I thought, he would die soon, and it would happen very quickly. But he walked to the last. He wasn't lying down? Camille couldn't believe it. How could that be? I won't load you with medical terms, but there are such diseases, the doctor replied. They don't affect the patient's appearance. That's what makes them so dangerous. That's all. I have nothing more to tell you.
Camille returned home upset. What she had learned had no bearing on what was happening to her. Benjamin was going to die anyway. Maybe that's why he hadn't told her anything, because Camille would have given anything to cure him. But that was just not possible. The woman felt love for Benjamin for the first time in recent memory. The only mystery in the whole story was why and how he had signed over his share to his mother, perhaps knowing that he was going to die. He wanted to thank her.
In this way, she reasoned, naturally, he couldn't tell me about it. Otherwise, his illness would have come to light. Camille felt a twinge of remorse. She had felt resentment toward Benjamin for months. Now it seemed to her that he was innocent. Maybe Benjamin had counted on his mother to reject his gift in favor of Emily. She excused him. In any case, it didn't matter anymore. The house will probably be bought in a few days. I have to think about where you and I are going to live. Camille left it at that again. She was immersed in herself, trying to find answers to her questions. After all, I was able to let go, and Stephen came into my life, she said to herself. And now I'm saying be what it may. I will accept whatever comes to me. Camille's behavior could be called frivolous, but the woman has already realized that the more you fight for something, the more chances you have to lose it. All wise decisions come only in silence. When you are overcome by contradictory feelings, it is never possible to make a reasonable choice. So it's better to take time and wait until things calm down inside. That's what Camille did. She immersed herself and the children in their favorite activities. She only came to her senses when they were long overdue for dinner. So I have to think of something. Nervously paced around the house, Christina. I don't want to waste my money on that long boy. When am I going to get rid of him? I can't take it anymore. After what had happened to her brother and father, the woman had no doubt that she would now be the sole heir to their entire fortune. But now, the whole thing was frozen. Christina had had a very difficult time communicating with her father as a child since she was a teenager. She was unbearable. When her mother died, the girl was 15 years old. Not only was her transition age in full swing, but she had an uncontrollable temper on top of it all. Christina was very defiant. She was always insulting her father, calling him names. Christina, stop it, her older brother told her. If the father does not pay attention to your antics, then I will not tolerate it anymore. So what? What can you do to me, you idiot? She yelled at the whole house. You're as much of an asshole as he is? William clenched his fists and pinned her against the wall. He looked intently into his sister's eyes. Don't worry, I'll find a way out of your horrible behavior. The special school is only a few steps away, he said dryly. If I hear you insult your father one more time, I'll report you. The brother was 19 at the time, and Christina was almost 16. After this preventive conversation, she became a little afraid of her brother, changed her ardor. But she wasn't going to give up. Christina fought her father in other ways. When she was 16, she told John that she had a boyfriend and that they were serious. Are you out of your mind? What if you got pregnant? Yelled at her by Christina's brother. You're asking for everything. Much to the dismay of her loved ones, the girl got pregnant at the age of 17. She did it deliberately. She wanted John to buy her and her boyfriend a separate place and provide for them all their lives. That's not going to happen. Immediately, her father told her, you will live at home until you are 18, and then I will buy you an apartment and you will be out of my life forever. I'm not spending another dime on you. You old idiot! Like mad, screamed the daughter. I hate you, both you and your henchmen. Shut your mouth. Her brother came up to her and grabbed her arm with force. You will stay in your room until you give birth. Just leave her alone, father ordered. Let her do what she wants. I've had my say. Christina wasn't going to give up. She spent the rest of the day and all night falling out of bed on her stomach, beating herself with her fists. The next day, she had a miscarriage. You stupid, crazy woman, screamed at her brother. What have you done? God, there's nothing human in you. At 18, Christina ran away from home with some guy. Her father robbed her of all her money and made a will for her son. That's the most ungrateful bitch I've ever met, William said to his father at the time. How can you not understand the obvious? Perhaps it is my fault? The father said enigmatically. His son did not understand him. He asked him what he was implying. But John never returned to the subject again. Time passed. After 5 years, a pale daughter appeared in the father's house. She had grown up and looked better. Christina was herself. Charmed by her daddy. Hi, she ran up to John. How I've regretted acting like this all this time. You have no idea how crazy I was, she wept. The father hugged his daughter, and hope shone in his eyes. William looked at his sister in disbelief. It seemed to him that she was playing. But, as the saying goes, no thief is caught. Christina told him that she had come to stay with them. At dinner, she told them her story. As it turned out, she married a businessman and went to Moscow. But he divorced her, leaving her half of his fortune. Christina, stay with us for a while, her father suggested. You have not been home for so long that your 3 days will not be enough for us. The daughter gladly accepted his offer. John decided to make up for lost time. Here, he handed her a credit card. As soon as you've spent it all, you'll tell me right away. That you have money doesn't interest me. You're my daughter too, so I want to do something for you. Christina refused for a long time, but she accepted her father's gift. Everything went well, the father was happy. And William was the only one who was feeling a little heavy. Dad, maybe she shouldn't buy such an expensive car yet? John asked his son when he asked to go to the car dealership with him. William, I've waited so many years for her to come back. I won't hold myself back any longer. I'm sorry, but she's my daughter too. His father patted him on the shoulder. The young man said nothing. He didn't feel sorry for the money. But the sudden appearance of Christina in their lives displeased him very much. 3 months passed when Christina brought her friend to her father's house. The girl was very good. Clara was better than Clara. She introduced the guest to her father and brother. We've known her for a long time. She's just passing through. So I thought I'd invite her. I hope you don't mind. William had no special interest in Christina's friend, but the guest constantly cast a confused look at him during the conversation. The girl turned out to be shallow. She reasoned on complex topics and quoted famous people. I see you have a good grasp of both politics and economics. Where did you study? William Plekhanov asked her in surprise. She said proudly, I studied in Moscow, and then I stayed there. Oh, wow. William smiled. Ordinary people don't study there. So you're special then? No way! She blushed. I'm very ordinary. It's just that I've always been interested in these subjects. And somehow it so happened that Slaga visited them a few days later, and then again, William became somehow afraid of her presence in his house guest and just attracted him to himself. Naturally, Christina had a hand in it. You can say she constantly advertised her friend. It's hard to believe a girl like that. And she was alone all this time. Her brother once said something to her. Oh, only until Clara. She's perfect. Do you know how many guys were chasing her? I saw it with my own eyes. She's still waiting for the one and only. What had that effect on William? He couldn't say. But 8 months later, he and Sarah were married. The man was crazy about his wife. Christina was jubilant, too. Dad, now you see I came back for a reason, don't you? Here's the fucking thing I brought you. She hugged John. To everyone's surprise, she got pregnant very quickly. The woman was in real shock. Slaga, aren't you happy? Her husband couldn't understand. We're going to have a baby. I'm very happy. I've come to my senses. Wife, no, I'm happy too. I'm just scared. She looked at him, and suddenly her eyes shone. William, you see, I didn't want to tell you, but I have a very rare condition. I could die during pregnancy. No, not that. Who told you? Have you been tested? He turned pale. We have a very good doctor. I'm sure he'll help you. Clara refused to be examined, but he talked her into it. They went through everything they could find on her and found nothing. But you see, were you worried? God wants you to have a baby, smiled her husband. Clara's pregnancy went completely uneventful. Her husband followed her closely, you might say. The woman went crazy with his care. Finally, the day came when Stephen was born. The mother didn't want to pay any attention to her child at all. Are you suffering from postpartum depression? Her husband tried to comfort her. I understand everything. The nurse will help you. Everything will be fine. Sweetheart. But as it turned out, his words not only did not comfort her, but on the contrary, made her furious. She often began to lock herself in her rooms or disappear somewhere in the city. The brother decided to talk to his sister Christina. What should I do? How can I help Clara? He asked her worriedly. I love my wife, William. She hugged him. Don't worry, she'll come to her senses soon. Realize how stressful this is. I promise I'll talk to her. She smiled. The next day, Christina arranged to meet Clara at a cafe. When she arrived, her friend was already waiting for her. Christina, I can't take it anymore. Immediately, she said. Not only did we not agree on a child, but now I have to waste my time on it. You told me 3 years and we'd get our money. So what now? On the contrary, it's going even better than we planned. You'll divorce him, and since you'll leave with the baby, he'll definitely pay you very good money. I know the surveillance. He won't leave you. I don't want to play anymore, and I don't need the kid. Where am I going to take him? Christopher's already howling. Upset, said Clara. Well, do you want me to talk to him? When we planned all this, he knew what he was doing. There's no reason to let it go now. Let him do something for you, objected Christina. You're risking your life. And he's just sitting there waiting for you to come back to him with more money. In the 5 years Christina had been away, she had become even more convinced that she and her loved ones were not on the same path. At first, she did settle well. The 50-year-old man she'd run off with had kept her for almost 3 years. Not to say that the girl was shocking, but she had everything. Even then, Christina was already working out her revenge plan. She wanted not only to take her half of the money, but to take everything from her brother and father. So Christina expressed everything to her old man, as she called her roommate, and decided to start a new life. She robbed him not badly, so she had enough money for the first time. The girl decided that she had had enough of aging suitors. Finally, she began to date a young guy. Of course, her father was worried about her all this time. And when he went to the police to find his daughter, she was the last to say that she did not want to know him. Then Christina was not ready neither for reconciliation, nor for kinship with him, nor with her brother. But time passed, and more, often in the life of Christina began to appear young men who refused to support her. But the girl was not accustomed to another life. So one day, Christina found herself at the bottom of a hopeless guy without money and with a large debt for non-payment of rented apartment. God, how can I be now? She thought in horror. I'll soon be on the street. A few weeks later, she met a couple, Clara and Christopher, who were not married but had been living together for many years. They listened to Christina's tragic story and decided to help her. As they say, like attracts like. The young men turned out to be con artists. They were mainly engaged in theft. Christina was always amazed at how Christopher on the move could take off a chain or earrings from some passerby. No one could even notice when he performed these operations. Look, if we get one case back, we'll be very rich. I'll give you a third of my father's estate, and that's about 80 million. Christina had an ingenious idea, and, as she expected, Christopher and Clara were very interested in the case. The plan was this. Clara would constantly come to visit Christina and under her cover to collect the necessary information. But things immediately went wrong. Christina noticed that the girl was interested in her brother. She never studied at any institute. She and Christopher came to Moscow, so to speak, to earn money. And what if you marry him? Then we'll quickly gather everything and in 2 years we'll have our whole operation, Christina suggested. And again, Christopher and Clara easily agreed to this venture, but only with the child it turned out to be a problem. The girl wanted to have an abortion, but William went crazy. He constantly pursued her. His care became practically round the clock. If you take the pill and miscarry, it'll come out right away and he'll suspect something, reasoned Christopher, who had absolutely no feelings for the baby. So you have to have it, and after the divorce, we can dump it somewhere. It'll just disappear. There's a lot of kids disappearing every day and nobody ever finds them. You could put him in an orphanage. You'll have all your money by then, so he can't do anything to you, Christina suggested. And perhaps everything would have gone according to their plan if it hadn't been for Clara. After the baby was born, she absolutely did not want to see him. Finally, he managed to gather all the necessary information to take all the money from Christina's father. There was only one detail left, and it was because of it that he had to wait a few more days, and the case failed. 2 weeks before the planned withdrawal of money from all of Christina's father's accounts, William's business got better. First of all, he was very worried about his wife. In the second place, their largest wholesale buyer had announced that they were going out of business. William rarely bent over idly, but that day he didn't want to go home. He decided to wander around town, but he didn't feel like going downtown either. William chose the most remote corner and decided to walk there. He kept thinking about what they should do now. He remembered that today he had not eaten anything besides his morning coffee. There was a cafe up ahead, and he decided to go there. William hadn't undressed yet when his gaze fell on the far table. He bounced away from the door, hid as far as he could behind a coat rack, and pretended to look for his coat. William saw Clara holding some man's hand, and then he kissed it. "Are you going to tell me yourself? Or should I go to the police? They heard the lovers not far from each other." Clara shrieked and jumped up from her chair. She didn't even know what to say. "William, let's get acquainted. This is my brother," she said in a trembling voice. "Did you get it wrong? Do you want me to show you the camera footage of you kissing?" He said coldly. "I'm not kidding. This is a fraud. It's in your best interest to tell me everything." William fumbled in his pocket for his phone and pressed record. He listened to the story until the end. "Good. Now, Clara, you go home and pack all your things. I'm not giving you the baby. I guess I don't need to tell you that you won't get a dime from me," he concluded. That evening, there was a real scandal at her father's house. Christina denied it, but William turned on the tape. "They set it up on purpose!" screamed the daughter throughout the house. Finally, she no longer had to hide her true face. "That's it. I'm calling the police," the brother said, and grabbed the phone. And John walked over to him. "Christina, get your stuff and don't ever let me see you in my house again," he shouted angrily. "Get out of here!" "Father, I'm going to report her to the police," William insisted. "That bitch needs to be held accountable for her actions." "Don't. She's already punished herself." His father stopped him. "My daughter is dead. We buried her today." Christina sat on the couch. Something was going through her head. Finally, her eyes brightened. The woman jumped up and ran out into the yard. She pulled into the street and headed toward the house. Camille was about 11 when she signaled for the landlady to sit down. "Hello," smiled contentedly at the guest. "Camille, I need to have a serious talk with you. You see, I'm in serious trouble right now. I can't continue to pay you so much. But Stephen has become very attached to you. and that's the most important thing to me. I suggest you move in with us. You'll be fully provided for, and I'll pay you less for your work. But you could rent your house to someone. You and I are going to have a long partnership. So this could be a very promising project for you. I will. Without delay, the nanny replied. When can we move in? As soon as tomorrow. Christina laughed. Just tell the driver when to come and pick you up. Our conditions are very good. The maid will give you a room. I'll let her know if I'm not here. That's all right. They'll show you around. Christina, happy, came home. She couldn't use the bills. All she had was a small allowance, and she wasn't going to spend it on her brother's son. In fact, you could say that Christina was very lucky. After her father kicked her out of the house for the last time, she'd been through a lot. Good thing he let her take her things in her car with her. With Christopher and Clara, she had a fight so that their roads immediately parted. But Christina did not grieve for long.
She almost immediately met her new boyfriend. Handsome Jacob simply drove her crazy. They together founded a charitable foundation, which allegedly collected money for the treatment of seriously ill children.
For 4 years, they never cured anyone, but they lived very well. And quite by accident, Christina found out that her lover had a mistress. In general, she kicked him out of the apartment, which they bought together with stolen money, and threatened him that she would report him to the police. She lived in limbo for almost a year. Jacob closed down their office, so Christina was broke again. And then about a year ago, she got word that her father and brother had crashed. Christina flew home on a plane. Now all their possessions were going to go to her. But to her great dismay, her brother survived. First, he was in a coma for 2 weeks, and then he regained consciousness. He urgently needed to do several operations on the spine. Otherwise, he could remain for the rest of his life, disabled or even die. But Christina turned the matter around very cleverly. She talked to the head doctor to get her brother released for further treatment. According to her, she was going to send William abroad, but after the hospital, she secretly brought her brother home at night and hid him in the basement. She hired a special person to stay with him during the day, and at night, when all the servants were gone, she would go home. Christina called a good specialist to examine William. He must be taken seriously, the doctor told her. Otherwise, no one knows how it will end. He might be dead in 6 months. Christina stated that her brother was being treated abroad. She hoped that now she would be able to manage her father's estate. But it wasn't that simple. As long as William was alive, she had no right to interfere with anything. So, the woman told everyone to go on with their business until William returned. There wasn't much cash on hand, and Christina found a good lawyer. Even if your brother dies, you won't be able to use his estate because he has a son, he told her then. Somehow I can't. Christina questioned him in horror. She had already hoped to get rid of William and enter the inheritance. Well, the only amelient is that you will become Stephen's guardian. Then you can count on something. At least some of it, the lawyer said. So all of Christina's dreams of easy money had once again come crashing down. She had always hated her father and brother. She felt they had done her an injustice. And now she expected to finally get back what was hers. And since in her mind, they had done her great moral damage, it could only be repaid with all the property that her brother and father owned. The woman would not agree to anything less. William continued to die slowly in the cellar, but Christina did not care. She hoped that in 6 months he would finally die, but his body was strong. It had been almost a year, and he was still struggling. Christina was already tired of it. She was even thinking of somehow helping her brother go to the other side of the world. Of course, she wouldn't do it with her own hands, but she already had a man for that purpose. She had set herself a deadline of a bloody nose in 3 months. She wanted to settle the matter. Surely she planned to sell all of William's enterprises and all of her property and return to Moscow with the money. Money was running out, so Christina slowly sold some things from the house. She had already given her father's watch for a lot of money and was looking through his collection. John was a lover of painting. He had about 20 valuable paintings. Camille went into the house, covered her face with her hands, and sobbed. Everything that was happening to her now seemed simply unbelievable. She had calmed down, given up the fight, and her housing problem was solved, even if only for a while. But now it was better than renting. God, thank you, she said aloud and looked at the children, who were playing with their toys. After lunch, Camille began to pack the things she wanted to take with her. Evelyn turned out to be a very principled person. She said that any of the furniture would also be included in the price of the house. Camille agreed because she could get some money for it too. 3 huge bags appeared in the hall and a big pile of things on the floor. Camille wanted to sell some things first, but she had 3 days left on the house before she had to make a deal on the house. The woman called the neighbors and they instantly took everything for themselves. Let them have it, the landlady thought to herself. I'm without a house now, and I won't be able to carry it all with me. By the time the driver came to pick up Stefan, Camilla had finished with her things. She hadn't taken anything that belonged to her husband. Could you pick us up early tomorrow, about 5 o'clock? Christina's taking us to her place. We're staying at her house now. Yeah, she told me. The man sighed. Good. Tomorrow morning we'll talk again. Emily was asleep and Camille couldn't close her eyes. Her life was changing so drastically that she was scared, but it would be better than if we stayed on the street with my daughter, she reasoned. Especially if I have the money for my share, yeah, I've got a little more. If we at Christina a couple of years will hold out, then I can buy us a 1-room apartment. But apart from purely practical domestic problems, Camille realized that she was also very attached to Stephen. The boy was very dear to her. She did not want to leave him to Christina. She had no love for him like that. She had no more doubts about it. The next day, the driver first moved Camille's things. The woman had an important call to make. Evelyn, please come over. I'm leaving home today, she said coldly to her mother-in-law. Leaving? She sounded perplexed. Well, good. The buyers won't be here until tomorrow. I'll come over and we'll discuss it on the spot. Oh. Camille was nervous. She wanted to finish all the business with her husband's mother. She hoped that after she received her money tomorrow, her mother-in-law would be out of her life forever. Evelyn went through all the rooms in a demonstrative manner. All the furniture was in place. Camille did not even bother to take the dishes with her. So where are you worrying about? I heard an unexpected question. Going to your mother's? That's right. That's what I told you. No, I'm moving in with some rich people. Camille answered calmly. I'm working for them. I'm babysitting. She pointed at Stephen. Evelyn gave her a dismissive look. A look of great doubt. Oh, yes. She smiled then. I wish you luck in your new place. The guest went towards the exit of the house. They agreed that tomorrow at 10 Arbons, the transaction would take place at the notary's office. Evelyn said goodbye dryly. She paid no attention to her granddaughter. Is she really that inhuman? Or is she pretending to be? Camille could not help herself, taking her daughter in her arms. How could she not feel any emotion for her own granddaughter? Evelyn quickly got into a cab. She had to go to the lawyer urgently. Tomorrow, the payment issue had to be resolved. Everything in life is somehow connected. And so it was in this story. A long time ago, the beautiful Evelyn won the heart of a young man. It didn't bother her that he was married. Evelyn, if I had met you earlier, John said to her, I would not hesitate to marry you. John was rich. At first, Evelyn used the tactic of not being a criminal, and for 3 months rejected the advances of her new acquaintance, always knowing that she deserved the best. Therefore, Evelyn was only going to marry a wealthy man. She and John met by chance at an event. The girl was working as a secretary at the time. Despite her beauty, she seemed unapproachable. At the end of the banquet, at the end of the event, John approached her and invited her to a cafe. She said no right away. What came over him then? Oh, it's hard to say. The man had always been a model family man, but meeting Evelyn was the biggest mistake of his life. Very quickly, John began to stop by the company where Evelyn worked, then to meet her after work. But it turned out that the girl showed no interest in him. She did not reject John, but did not let him near her. The man had completely floundered for months. His obsession with the girl began to subside little by little. Evelyn felt that she was overplaying her hand and could lose a promising man. There was a thaw in her. John was just crazy with happiness. "Evelyn, I love you," he kept telling her. "You'll be mine alone." Despite all the arrogance of the girl, the man was so in love with her that he did not notice it. For almost 2 years, John provided for Evelyn completely. He bought her a nice house, but the girl wanted more. She wasn't satisfied with being a mistress. "John, if you love me and not your wife, why don't you stop lying to her?" Evelyn told him once. "I love you too, and I deserve to be your wife too." The man realized that Evelyn and his wife Kathy were very different people. His cognitive dissonance led to a bifurcation. John loved both his mistress and his wife, and deep in his heart, he always felt that sooner or later Evelyn would leave, whereas with Kathy, he would end this life. The further it went, the worse it got. Evelyn began to blackmail John. She left him several times, cutting off all communication with him. But then he wasn't ready to let her go. John sought to see her again, and with her I don't want to, and without her, I can't. He said to himself then, "How can I get out of this vicious circle?" Evelyn was a very pragmatic person. She was not satisfied with the fact that in 2 years of lovemaking, she had only a house and a few pieces of jewelry. Her love was worth so much more. Even though the girl didn't know how to love at all, it was probably the hotel. "You're not leaving me that easily," she said to herself. "I'm going to be your wife, and I don't care what the cost is. But I'll get everything I want. You'll have to pay for everything." The only thing Evelyn could blackmail John with was a child. She went to great lengths to get pregnant. "Evelyn," he sat there all pale. "John, I will not give up the child. I will provide for you fully." Such an answer did not satisfy the girl, but until her son was born, she could not do anything. John realized that he to Evelyn began to weaken. The girl no longer aroused in him, as before, a storm of emotion. "God, what have I done?" I clutched my head. Not only had I betrayed Kathy, but Evelyn was pregnant. The mistress immediately sensed something was wrong with John. It was 2 months before the baby was due. "You won't get away from me," Evelyn was angry. "Whatever I get my hands on, I'm never letting go again." On a cold November morning, Benjamin was born. The baby's father came to the maternity hospital several times. He had made up his mind that John wanted to pay Evelyn enough money to give her 10 years of carefree living. But in return, he intended to ask for his freedom. 3 weeks after Evelyn was discharged, they had a very difficult conversation. "Evelyn, I'm going to transfer about $10 million into your account. Do you have a house? I will pay extra if necessary." John started it. "But me." He hesitated. "We can no longer maintain our relationship." "I'm sorry. I can't leave my family." "You mean you want to pay me off?" The girl screamed. "I had a baby because of you? And now you want to leave me?" "Evelyn, I offered you a choice. You could have had an abortion." He tried to calm her down. "And after all, it's not like I'm leaving you. I'll provide for your life completely. Isn't that enough? John left, and Evelyn couldn't calm down for a long time. It is not to say that she had an insane amount of maternal love for Benjamin. But she was afraid that if she gave the child to the orphanage, John wouldn't give her a penny. Again, she wasn't going to give up. 3 months later, in freezing cold weather, she headed to John's house. Evelyn knew he was at work right now. Hello. The landlady came out to see her. Who are you here to see? She looked at the child in horror. To see you, she said arrogantly. We can talk to you. This is a very important matter. Kathy was very nervous as Evelyn developed the baby. Not only had she guessed what they would be discussing, but she had a very good reason. Kathy was 3 months pregnant with her daughter. My name is Evelyn, the girl introduced herself. I'm your husband's mistress, she declared blithely. I see, Kathy whispered with pale lips and put her hands on her stomach. And what do you want? But I think you should understand, Evelyn declared. John and I have a son. We love each other. I'd like to ask you to stay out of our way. I smiled at the girl's insolence. Kathy, do you want me to consent to your relationship? No, we've been together for about 5 years without your consent. She didn't slow down. Your son is big now, so you can handle him easily now. And John and I, as they say, still have a long way to go. Did I hear you right? Are you claiming my place? The lady of the house was even more surprised. I tell you openly that your presence has a negative effect on our relationship. John hasn't loved you for a long time. Why do you want to spoil our life? Evelyn looked at Kathy intently. Kathy's seen a lot of people in her life. She'd worked for Social Security until her maternity, until her last day. But the guest behavior was hard to call. It wasn't even supercilious, it was just instantly self-righteous. Well, we've had our talk. The hostess got up from this your sofa. I'll ask you to dress the child and follow me. In 5 minutes, Evelyn was red-eyed. She was confident of her victory. Kathy led her to the front door. Was this your first and last visit to this house? She said calmly. Goodbye. How dare you? Evelyn exploded. You are nobody here. Get out of my house. I'll tell John everything now, and he'll put you out on the street. The guest was taken outside by a worker who was shoveling snow in the yard. She shouted at the gate for a long time. Evelyn was so angry that she even wanted to throw the child over the fence. She was just mad with anger. Kathy grabbed her stomach. It was just ripping. The woman called an ambulance. In the evening, her husband came to see her. Kathy, I'm sorry for everything. I'll accept it even if you don't live with me after this. But I don't. It's like she lured me into a net. I wanted to break up with her a long time ago, but she said she was pregnant by me, my husband cried. She's crazy. I realized it too late. Kathy. John forgave, but only the pregnancy with her daughter was not easy for her. From birth, the girl was very restless. When she was 5, she became so fashionable that her mother went crazy. Christina always lied that she loved her mother, but as early as the age of 7, he called her foul words and openly despised her. Maybe that's why Kathy became seriously ill and died. Christina was always a real monster. Of course, Evelyn didn't get what she wanted either. John, as promised, had transferred the money to her so that she hadn't needed anything for 7 years. In fact, if she had lived a little more modestly, she would have had enough money for 12 years. And if she had worked, she would have had enough for the rest of her life. Evelyn returned home in a rage. She decided to give up her son and surrender him to an orphanage. But the next day, John called her and asked her to come to the notary. He did not risk it and made everything official. He transferred Eugene in the account of alimony for his son $15 million. Then he hoped that this woman would be out of his life forever. But as soon as Evelyn ran out of money, she began to blackmail John. he won the case. Then she found out that his wife had died, and she tried to have an affair with him again. But by that time, John was already an experienced Evelyn. "Even if you are the last woman on Earth, I still won't have a relationship with you," he declared then. "What a scumbag you are." She spat in his face. "You took advantage of me for almost 5 years, and now you're turning your nose up at me. You see, a woman should have dignity." He wiped his face with a napkin. "But you don't know that feeling, do you?" Evelyn's always been a prominent woman. She was always being courted, but she knew her worth. That's why after John, she chose an older businessman who was also invested in her. Evelyn was a cuckoo mother. Sometimes she did have genuine feelings for Benjamin, but for the most part, the boy spent time with his nanny, while Evelyn vacationed abroad with her old man and what she called her lover. Benjamin missed her very much. A lot of money passed through Evelyn's hands, but then her businessman went abroad for permanent residence. He didn't take her with him, so she had the idea to get John back again. But, as they say, not fate. This time he not only did not bite her, but did not even look in her direction. And so, years later, the woman finally felt that everything must be paid for. A new suitor appeared in her life. He was younger than Evelyn. He was so hot, she lost her head, and with it, all her money. How did that happen? Evelyn still didn't know, but her Noah had taken everything from her, and the only thing she had left was the one-room apartment she lived in.
Benjamin never got involved in his mother's business. You could say he lived on his own. When the boy turned 18, he moved out. Evelyn resisted a little, but let her son go. She was more concerned with her own life.
From time to time, she wondered how Benjamin was doing. The boy was happy to have at least this manifestation of her love. After Benjamin married Camille, Evelyn had an affair with Noah and lost everything. She never told her son about her affairs. Evelyn tried to hire some people to deal with her lover, but he turned out to be tougher than her. For almost 3 years, Evelyn had to lead a normal life. She was forced to get a job. A devious plan had been brewing in her head for a long time. But as long as John was alive, she couldn't carry it out. Evelyn turned to a lawyer to help her make Benjamin a claimant for a share in her father's estate. And theoretically, it could be done. But when John found out, he nearly tore her apart. "Evelyn, calm down before I destroy you. Did you know what you were getting into? You didn't give birth to Benjamin for me. You gave birth to Benjamin for yourself so you could blackmail me with him. Well, I've already paid enough for him. If you don't stop, I won't let you in," he told his ex-mistress. And then the unexpected miracle of John died. Evelyn rejoiced. She began to prepare all the documents for Benjamin's share of John's inheritance. And everything was going well until 6 months later she was told by a doctor. She knew that her son was terminally ill, and the case stopped. Evelyn felt sorry for Benjamin, but most of all, she felt sorry for John's money, which she then claimed. Benjamin didn't really want to get involved in all this, but he had spent so many years trying to prove his love to his mother that in his eyes this case looked like a chance. The man hoped that when his mother received his inheritance, she would finally recognize him. All his conscious life, he had dreamed that one day his mother would love him. A few days before Benjamin Evelyn died, a lawyer called and said that they could fight for the inheritance. Only this case would cost a lot of money. Of course, the woman didn't have that kind of money. So she came up with the idea of slipping her dying son to sign a will, his shares on her. And he signed it without reading it. Evelyn tried to do something for her son, but the doctor told her that it was useless, so she cried for several nights. Evelyn decided to pull herself together and accept everything as it is. Tomorrow, Evelyn would have enough money to pay the lawyer. The point was that since William, John's son, was going to die soon, A rumor Christina had started. The entire estate should be divided 3 ways between Christina, William's son, and Emily. But the lawyer had promised to make it so that instead of the granddaughter, the son's share would go to her and not to his daughter. How such a thing was possible, she didn't really go into it. The main thing was that she should get what she thought was hers. Evelyn opened the door and greeted the lawyer. He looked at her cheerfully. "Well, then we'll get right on the case tomorrow," he announced. "We'll look into a few things. Maybe the fact that his son is still alive will be better for us. Even I have already discussed all the subtleties with several colleagues, and with the judge too," he added cautiously. "Except for his daughter, there's no other competition," Evelyn sighed. "But that's not true. We'll nail her to the wall in no time. I got a serious file on her. She's going to jail, so she's not Ribnitsa." He smiled. "The only problem is your daughter-in-law, since she is the legal representative of Benjamin's daughter. But I'll deal with that quickly," the mother-in-law declared smugly. "You can count on me in this matter." Aline was very excited about moving into the Stephen house. Of course, she was under a lot of stress, but if things didn't work out here, Camille would be able to rent a place for herself and her daughter. That's what she reassured herself with at the time. They were met by a friendly woman. She introduced herself as Sophia. She took Camille to their room. As it turned out, it was next to Stephen's room. The boy was overjoyed. He immediately began to show the guests his toys. "The landlady is not always at home, so if anything, ask me goodbye," Sophia said. "When you are rested, you will go downstairs. Dinner will be served." It was a good start. Camille, with trembling hands, began to take her daughter's things out of her bag. Stephen was with them. He never left her side. A few days later, the boy's bed was brought into the nanny's room, and they all started sleeping together. The next day around 11, Camille and the children were already at the notary's office. Everything went smoothly. The only thing that surprised the daughter-in-law was the words of her mother-in-law, which she said to her after the completion of the transaction. "You do not get lost, or you can, I'll need it." Evelyn was ambivalent. "I will." "Why?" Camille asked. "You and I have already settled all the issues. But I might want to see Emily." Her mother-in-law smiled. "After all, I'm her grandmother." Camille could barely contain herself from telling her that she had nothing more to do with them. Regardless, Camille Joyful was on her way back to her new home. She and the children had a quick dinner and went to play in the yard. Stephen's father had a large garden as well as a huge playground. The boy told me that he loved to play there with his father. A few days passed and Camille began to get used to her new life. Late one night, she heard a noise. The woman looked out the window and saw Christina arguing with a woman. They were standing on the side of the house that overlooked the nanny's room. "I told you not to give him any pills," Camille heard, but then Christina came to her senses and disappeared with the woman. The next day, when they were walking, Camille noticed that there was a door on the side that ran to the neighbor's house. She went there on purpose, you might say. "There's nothing there." The gardener's voice startled her. "There's a deep cellar where the owner used to store his things. Then it was abandoned. The kids just threw a ball down there. The babysitter started making excuses. I don't know my way around here yet. Have you been working here long?" "Yes, about 5 months," the man replied. "There's only one worker left here who worked here under the old owner. He told me about the cellar. So after William and his father died, all the servants left." Camille started thinking. "What do you mean gone?" "The new landlady threw them all out. He was honest. Only the man I told you about. Comes here from time to time." Camille walked back in thoughtfulness. That evening, she watched at the window. Around 10, the same woman Christina had argued with yesterday showed up. Apparently, she headed for the exit. The nanny walked outside in confusion. Surely there must be cameras everywhere, she thought. I'll go for a walk in the garden. Maybe I have insomnia. For about 20 minutes, Camille sat on a bench. It was warm. The woman kept looking in the direction where the mysterious door was located. There were a few streetlights burning in the courtyard, but it was dark on the side, so Camille took a chance. She approached the door and could barely make out that there was a large lock hanging on it. She was about to leave, but on a hunch she jerked the door slightly and the door opened. The lock was just hanging there for diversion. The nanny's legs were shaking, but an unknown force was pulling her down. It took her a long time to get down the steps. It was only much later that she learned that the woman who guarded the cellar had been drinking, so she often forgot to lock the door. The steps ended and another door appeared in front of Camille. She took a chance, heard a soft creak, and entered. A large, spacious hall appeared before the nana. To her amazement, there were several dimly lit lamps burning. "What is this?" she asked in horror. "Is there someone here?" Camille said softly, and a rustle or a groan came from somewhere. The woman listened and headed in that direction. Camille's heart was pounding frantically, but she went nonetheless. In the dim light, she saw a bed near the wall, with someone lying on it. "Who are you?" A quiet voice was heard. Camille's new nurse came closer and noticed a man. He had long hair and a beard. "Please give me some water." It came to her, "I've been thirsty for over 24 hours. Please." Camille grabbed the jug that was on the table and brought it to the stranger. He took a greedy sip. "Who are you?" She couldn't help herself. "Why are you here?" "Does anyone know you're here?" "Not only knows, but she herself hid me here," the man answered. "This is my home, and after the accident, I became its hostage." "But how could that be?" Camille couldn't believe it. "Why aren't you in your room?" You know, I used to be a naive person too. And at first I thought Christina was just playing with me. But no, she's deliberately trying to make me go away. She's not succeeding so far. First she banned my medication, then she had me fed only once a day. Well, now she has ordered this crazy gruel to drive me to dehydration. The stranger spoke quietly. "But why?" the nanny asked in horror. "It's against the law, after all. She could go to jail. Don't you know my sister? She's a psychopath who believes she can get away with anything. She doesn't care about laws, her money and the law and the God she worships." William replied,
I refused to sign over all the property to her, so she decided to let me live off the land. She hopes that now that she's become Stephen's guardian, she'll be able to settle the matter. But it won't work out. I'm your Stephen's nanny.
The stranger looked at William. "My name is Camille. You have a wonderful son. How is he?" The man was agitated after the accident. "I've never seen him. That idiot did everything she could to make us suffer as much as possible. He's fine. He loves you very much." The nanny tried to calm him down. "William?" "Something must be done about it," she said seriously. "I can't walk. I needed serious treatment, but Christina refused and brought me here. This basement was once home to Dad's art collection. No one knew about it but me. Then he set up a special office in the house and moved his entire collection there. Could you make a report to the police?" Camille suggested it. "Otherwise, you'll just die here."
Does she have someone there? William answered right away. I need a phone so I can call the right people. But I don't have one. I left mine in the house, Camille realized. Let me get it for you.
Camille cautiously went back into the house, but to her great amazement, she was met by Christina. The landlady looked at her unhappily. "Where have you been?" she said coldly. "I don't allow my servants to go out into the yard at night. This is a very important rule. If you break it again, I'll have you thrown out of here. I understand." "Yes, I'm sorry. I felt sick and I just went out to get some air. Camille tried to justify herself. She barely made it to her room. If it hadn't been for her absent-mindedness, William would have been able to call someone from her phone by now. But now she had to be very careful. The next day, while Camille was outside with the children, Christina drove away. Camilla immediately rushed to the door, but to her horror, the door was locked, most likely from the inside. God, what am I going to do now? She was worried. Maybe file a police report herself. William said someone might intercept him right away. He probably has more important connections. But how do I get to the right people? Camille, on the one hand, clearly felt she didn't have much time. On the other, the case she was tangled up in was very risky. Christina was so angry she could barely hold her steering wheel. Some man had called her last night and introduced himself as a lawyer. He told her unequivocally that he had dirt on her and it would be best for her to meet with him. Almost all night she could not sleep. At about 1 a.m. she couldn't stand it and went downstairs. And there she met a nanny who for some reason at such a time was climbing and on the street. Christina decided that she would deal with her later. The main thing was to meet the man who was blackmailing her. Christina had a very good acquaintance in the police, and she could count on him, but only in some small cases. She ran into the cafe where she had an appointment. A man waved her over. I warn you that every word you say to me now will be directed against you. Instead of greeting her, she said, Christina, I am very glad to see you too. The stranger smiled nonchalantly. Allow me to introduce myself. Rick, a lawyer? What do you want from me? Not paying attention to his words, angrily asked Christina. You see, you and I have a very delicate matter, he continued. It is about your father's inheritance, which does not belong to you. What in sang in him mad eyes, Christina? What are you noodling on my ears here? My father is dead. My brother is abroad in a very serious condition. I am his son's guardian. But first of all, I have proof that my father wrote a notarized document and that not 1 cent of his money will ever go to you. He held out a copy of some kind of document, mirror, and a few other reliable facts about your past. Here is Jacob's confession that you forced him to start a foundation and took all the money that came into his account. And here's confirmation from Clark and Christopher that you're preparing an operation to illegally seize all the money from your father's accounts. What the hell is this? She tore up the papers. What do you want from me? Who sent you? Unless you want to go to jail? If you don't want to go to jail, and the evidence I have is enough, and you don't have the money to pay the court, then I suggest you take the initiative and personally write a disclaimer to the notary of all the property of William John, which after his death will go to his son, Stephen. Fuck you! She threw the torn documents in Yerrigan's face. This will never happen. All right, then I'll talk to your brother. I'm flying to Europe tomorrow. Still just as calmly, the lawyer stated, I have information about which clinic he might be in. Christina ran out of the cafe. She had to do something. She called Liam. He used to work for her father, but after Christina returned, he became her lover, so she kept him. Plus, Liam had helped her with her brother. Well, tonight we'll get him off your death certificate, he answered her. Well, what about the lie that he was lying abroad? Through her tears, she said. There had been an attempt on their lives. Naturally, no one knew where William was. You tried to save his life, and this night you will be informed that he is dead. He tried to calm her down. The woman calmed down a little, returned home, and began to think about what she should do in this situation. She dialed her policeman, and he assured her that he would do everything. Christina C.K. I would crush that lawyer with my own hands, so it will be calm, the captain replied. Camille immediately noticed that Christina was very nervous, returned home. She had to take a risk. She had no other choice. The nanny put the children to bed in the evening and cautiously crept behind the house. She was sitting behind a large bush when some woman came out of the cellar. Camille approached her. "Hello, please leave the key." "The landlady asked me to move in there," she said quietly. "But she didn't tell me anything behind the flying tongue," she replied. "I'll call her now." No need, she's already asleep. Christina asked me to give you this." She held out some bills. "This is for your good work." The woman gladly took the money and handed her the keys. Camille carefully went downstairs, quickly ran into William's room. "Make a quick phone call. We have very little time." "Did your sister suspect something?" "She met me yesterday and I was afraid to come back to you," Camille said quickly. William made 3 calls, but no one answered. They were getting desperate when suddenly someone called Camille's number back. "Seryoga, listen to me carefully. I'm in danger. Please inform me that someone is trying to kill me. I'm in the basement of my house. Please act." Very quickly, whispered William into the phone. "Is someone there? There are voices." "Do you hear someone talking?" William threw the phone under an old closet. It wasn't disconnected. Camille tried to hide somewhere, but there was nothing suitable except an old closet with unlocked doors. Christina said in horror as she and Liam went down into the basement. "What are you doing here?" "I warned you." "Well, let's get her out of here." "We leave no witnesses," laughed the man. "Well, strangulation would be the surest way to take him out. That way there won't be any stains on him. And we'll deal with her later." "Christina, you're an idiot," whispered the brother. "What do you expect? Do you really think no one will find out? You'll go to jail? I don't care what happens to you. But what you're doing now is a group thing. No one's going to give you an excuse. Shut your mouth. Do you know how much trouble you've caused me in my life?" She screamed in rage. "Because of you, you bastard, I lost everything. If it wasn't for you, my father would be dancing to my tune. You kept pulling his attention to yourself. Yes, he loved you more than me," William tried to say loudly. But he couldn't shout. "How many times did he forgive you? You've done nothing in your life. And then you decided to steal from him? I mean, look at you. You're a real lowlife. You wanted to rob my father, you slipped me that human bitch. And again, only because of my father? Not them, not you. Ungrateful fool. Fuck you." She hit her brother in the face. "You won't do anything to me. Soon you'll be sitting on a cloud and playing the harp with angels." Liam walked over to William and snatched the pillow on which his head lay. Camille quickly grabbed the decanter and hit him with all her might. Liam passed out. "You bitch!" Christina grabbed her hair. "I'll choke you right now with my own hands." Christina turned her back to her brother, and with all the strength he had, he hit her over the head with a pillow. This gave Camille the opportunity to break free. She grabbed the blanket that William was covered with and threw it over Christina. That way, it was easier for her to handle her. But the latter somehow got out of it and kicked Camille in the head. The nanny's eyes went spinning. She heard voices. Camille thought she was losing consciousness. And it was the police who arrived just in time. 2 weeks later, lawyer Yarrigan met with his client. The events of the past few days had been to their advantage. Christina was behind bars. "Well, Evelyn, is the last barrier left," said the lawyer to her. "We need your daughter-in-law to sign this document, but it will be very easy." Smiling, she said, "Don't worry, we'll have everything ready in a few days." Evelyn called Camille the same day and asked to see her. "Camille, I need you to sign this document." She held out sheets of paper and a pen. "It's about Emily. That she's my granddaughter." "What is it?" The daughter-in-law couldn't understand. She read the documents, pale. "Benjamin, John's son." She looked at her mother-in-law in amazement. "Do you know that name?" Evelyn became agitated. Did you know him? Oh, no, it's just that Benjamin never told me about his father. Camille couldn't get over it. Yeah, he didn't like to talk about him. The boy had a lifelong trauma from being abandoned by his father. The mother-in-law tried to play off Evelyn's distress. I can't sign this document. I'm sorry. Camille got up from the table. And don't ever call me again. Didn't see that coming, mother-in-law? Do you realize what you're saying? I'll have you out of motherhood in no time. Emily, for myself. You have nothing. No place to live, no job. But I don't think so. Camilo answered calmly. Goodbye. You had no mercy on us when you left us homeless. And grandmother and you were never for her. Fool. And how Benjamin only loved you, dusting you off. Didn't want to tell you he was seriously ill and would die soon. Evelyn was angry. It's a good thing I made him sign over his share to me. He never appreciated what I did for him, especially after he met you. Camille was coming home. Now all the secrets have come to light. Benjamin would never have bequeathed his share to his mother unless she had somehow forced him to. But what struck Camille most of all the flaws was that Benjamin turned out to be the son of William's father. The woman wanted to talk to him about it. After the police took Christina and Liam away, William was immediately taken to the hospital. He was in a very poor condition. 10 days later, when he had strength, he had his first operation. Everything went well. Camille continued to take care of the children all this time. She asked the cleaning lady to look after them sometimes, if she needed to go somewhere urgently. Stephen had already met his father, and it was very stressful for him. And for William, too. The woman spent a couple hours with Stephen from the accident and started to get ready for William. And when I go to see my dad, Stephen cried, I love him so much. He went over to Camille and she hugged the boy tightly and promised that it would be in a few days. William was feeling much better now. He could sit up. His vocal cords were working and his voice was louder. Camilla, hello. He cheered. How are you? How's Stefan? I've missed him so much. William, I'm fine. I'll talk to the doctor. He'll tell me when the kids can come and see you. William cheered him up. I found out today that my husband Benjamin was your father's son. Did you know anything about that? Yes, he sighed. After my mother died, Dad told me all about it. His mistress had been after him for a long time. I'll tell you the truth, he wished he could have dated Benjamin. Evelyn was stupid and stubborn. After she got her money, she immediately declared that he would not see his son. His father told how he would sometimes visit him at daycare and then at school in junior high. Benjamin didn't know him. I met with my mother-in-law today. I mean Evelyn. She wanted me to sign a document that would give her the right to inherit part of your father's estate instead of Emily. Since Benjamin is dead, Camille said. Is she crazy, that woman? What does she expect? He marveled. If Benjamin had sued me, that would have made some sense. Even in Emily's case, it's already very complicated. But what does she have to do with it? Camille and William hit it off immediately. The man instantly noticed how she felt about his son. They became friends. William, I'm sorry that Evelyn has dragged you and me into her dirty business, she said, with annoyance in her voice. Camille, she won't succeed. This has nothing to do with you. He touched her hand, and Camille shuddered. So much had happened lately that Camille was constantly on edge. After the Christina issue had been resolved, she was very worried about whether William would be helped to get back on his feet. The doctors had made no guarantees. Camille smiled at him and blushed. William kept his eyes on her. He immediately felt that this woman had something to do with him, and now he wasn't ready to let her go. Evelyn was tearing and metal. She wasn't going to back down. 2 days later, she decided to go to the hospital to see William. To her great amazement, she was there. "What are you doing here?" In a trembling voice, she asked. "My sister-in-law. Are you making trouble for me on purpose?" "Hello, Evelyn." Her daughter-in-law replied in equal amazement. "So it's you?" William looked at Camille and the guest. "Then let me introduce you to my bride. You already know Camilla, of course, but as your son's wife, after I'm released from the hospital, we'll have a wedding." "God, you're such a bitch," Evelyn cursed. "You put yourself under that lowlife for money for no. How could my Benjamin ever pay attention to you? You were never worthy of him. The game, Evelyn, was over. Hard work awaited her, and then a minimum wage pension. Life had a way of working things out. William had 3 more surgeries. The doctors saw significant improvement. I think we can cautiously hope that he will be able to walk, as Dr. Camille said when she came to visit him. He's too advanced. If we'd done all this right after the accident, he'd have been walking a long time ago. But what happened is what happened. No one knew how it was possible. Maybe William wanted it so badly, but after the last surgery he had a chance. Rehabilitation was a success, and after 8 months, William was finally discharged home. Yes, he couldn't run. He couldn't even walk fast. But slow walks with a crutch suited him just fine. It must be said that as soon as William began to feel better, he immediately went about his business, which of course suffered somewhat in his absence. But after 2 years, they not only returned to past results, but added considerably. The day came when William was returning home. Camille decided to throw a party for him. She, together with the servants, decorated the house and prepared a festive dinner. During the last week, Camille had been so wrapped up that she had hardly even slept. The car pulled into the yard and everyone rushed over to William. Camille walked slowly toward him. In both hands, she held the children's hands. Suddenly, Stephen burst out and rushed to his father. It was all very exciting for Camille. She let go of her daughter and she ran after Stephen. The woman felt dizzy and fell to the ground. Stephen immediately turned around. Mama shouted at the top of her voice, "Is he, Mama? What's wrong?" and ran to Camille. Everyone stood silently. No one could say anything at such a moment. William was already out of the car, leaning on his crutch, tears running down his cheeks. Stephen ran up to Camille, crying, "Mama, don't die." The boy sobbed at the top of his voice. Camille had already been helped to get up, and she was coming to see Stephen. "You're told, I love you." He did not calm down. "I will never leave you. I love you too, son." Camille kissed him. "Stephen, we'll always be together. I promise you." Emily showed up at Mom's side. She hugged her mom too. William came limping up to them and hugged Camille and them, and the children. "Well, the whole family is here." William looked into her blue eyes. "I love you. Thank you for your son. I love you too." Tears of joy flowed from Camille's eyes. "And thank you for Stephen. Our happiness is just beginning. You're all my family."